You're banned! And Josh?
Want to play my games on Steam?
You're banned from that too! I am banned from
Playing the games I want to on Steam.
every
Problematic game.
No! All of you! You're all banned! Banned, 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 banned!
This one's going to be a bit different. I had to do some research before starting this one. So much research, in fact, that we're going to have to make like trails and do this in chapters. So this whole thing started roughly a week ago. And at first I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this is bad, but, you know, I've been pretty busy for the past week and a half or so. So I was like, okay, this is bad, but whatever. I don't want to say even more important things to worry about, because this is kind of important to me, but at the same time, I did have more important things to worry about, unfortunately. But yeah, stuff was going on, but then stuff kept going on, and then more stuff kept going on, and it really felt like this stuff was coming just one behind the other, and I'm just like, okay, I need to make a video on this because something's not quite right here. So we're gonna start with, I guess, for all intents and purposes, the ground zero of this whole thing. Similar stuff has happened before, but I mean, this sort of started the chain of current events. And that would be the Steam store updating its rules to prohibit content that payment processors don't like. Because before this, it was just stuff like hate speech, even though I would argue even that one's a little muddy, but we'll keep it simple for now. Hate speech, malware, sexual content that depicts real people, exploitation of children, real children, not anime characters, by the way. I bring that up for a reason. But when it got updated, there's now this pretty disturbing rule at the bottom of the list that essentially says that anything that card networks, banks, or internet network providers find problematic will also not be allowed. And I think you can kind of see like how this could be an issue, because this kind of creates a twofold regulation system. Because if Valve, who, keep in mind too, Valve tends to be pretty hands-off with its edgy and controversial content, at least as far as I know. You know, I've been buying Steam games for quite a while now. You know, provided it doesn't cross any of the extremes I just mentioned above, usually it was fine, but it's like now, so if they approve of something but then the payment processors don't, you're screwed. And when I say payment processors, I'm talking about like credit card companies, namely Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, because those are actually the three biggest payment methods for Steam. But yeah, and if Valve can fold this easily, I mean, if you mainly game on PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo, I mean, what chance do you stand over there? Because those other three have been known to, you know, be censorious at, you know, different times or the other. Actually, Xbox, I'm not so sure. But possibly, they might have done it at least a few times. And also, because the Steam store is completely digital, Valve had no choice, because their entire storefront, like I said, it's digital, and you need a payment processor so people can buy the games. You know, you can't just throw money at your monitor and buy your games that way. You're gonna have to buy it through a credit card, or through a debit card, or through PayPal, or whatever, you know. No payment processor, no games, and then they don't get to make money. So, in a way, yes, their hands were kind of tied with that. Now, I did mention that the rule was pretty vague, and that's because also it's led to the deletion of a lot of games already. Like, a common trend does seem to be that a lot of the games that have been deleted so far have been incest-themed. And regardless of how you feel about incest, at least, I guess, in a sexualized context, at the end of the day, love it or hate it, it's just a game. If it's a fictional depiction of something that features fictional characters who bear zero correlation to anyone in real life, I don't think it warrants a ban. Also, to what extent is the incest ban-worthy? Like, is it like a hentai game where you're playing as a character and one of the romance options is the character's sister, so that would get banned? But then, like, okay, fine, but what if it's a quote-unquote normal game, but it contains incest in a negative context? Like, it's used to show, like, a character is fucked up, and they're using a character being in an incestuous relationship to show that they're fucked up or something. Like, does that get banned too? Like, where do you draw the line? Oh, the line just depends on how the person doing the banning feels, it seems. Yeah, really sounds sustainable, huh? And then the thing too is, this isn't the first time that payment processors have created issues when it comes to the sale of digital content. I would say, at least from as far back as I can remember, especially with PayPal specifically, there's been some struggles previously with PayPal forbidding users purchase from certain places or purchase certain things if PayPal themselves doesn't approve of it. Even though payment processors are supposed to be a middleman, and really their only responsibility is just making sure that the transaction goes through fine. Like, as long as the content that's being exchanged isn't something like illegal or, you know, hurting anyone or doing anything like that, then like it's frankly none of their business. I mean, okay, it is their business because they're moving the money, but you get what I mean. Like, it's business, but it's none of their business, if we're going by the saying. However, I do want to point out that this time, with regards to this whole payment processor debacle, there does seem to have been a trigger. Enter Collective Shout. Collective Shout is a... how do I introduce these people? We'll keep it simple for now. I'll expand on them a little later, but for now we'll keep it simple. Collective Shout is we'll just call them a overzealous women's rights group. I guess they're like Anita Sarkeesian if she took red Gnosis. But Collective Shout, you know, shortly before Steam implemented this new update to their rules, if you go to Collective Shout's website, and you scroll down a bit, you'll see that they did write to the CEOs of the top payment processors for digital storefronts, namely PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, PaySafe Limited, Discover, and Japan Credit Bureau. Bureau. I don't know why I got tongue-tied on that, but whatever. You get what I mean. They wrote what I assume to be the most popular, you know, payment processors, and they basically said, hey, listen, you got a lot of problematic games and we don't like it, so take them down. And while it is very strange that a small fringe group of feminists managed to cause this much damage, it does explain Valve's sudden change in tune. The events do kind of line up. And Collective Shout had previously succeeded in banning another game called No Mercy, which had depictions of... hold on, I can't say that word. I'm on YouTube and I just remembered it's run by a bunch of pussies who don't understand what context is. No Mercy was a game that depicted struggle snuggling, and they managed to get that game taken down in, I believe, several countries. I'm not sure if the US was one of them, but hey guys, Weapons from the Future here. It is indeed everywhere. They managed to get that game banned everywhere. It's no longer on Steam regardless of what region you live in. And bear in mind too, I just want to say No Mercy, it doesn't really sound like anything I would want to play either, but again, I'm not really gonna, like, again, if it's fictional and it's not depicting anyone real, I'm not gonna sit here and say, like, it should be banned. I think people should be able to create and put whatever they want for sale, and, I mean, if it's garbage, I'll call it that too, but, like, you know... I'm sure you've heard people say it before, but this whole, I don't like it, it should be banned, it's a slippery slope. It really is. And we are sliding. Anyway, following this, they decided to move in to try and ban any and all games off of Steam that depict struggle snuggle, incest, or child abuse. And bear in mind that the vast majority of these are fictitious depictions. So I'm not even referring to this in the context of real people. I'm just referring to, like, it could be games that so much as contain this content, be it in a positive or negative light. Like, as I mentioned before with the incest, like, what if it's just a part of the game's storytelling? Does it still get the ban hammer? Now, Collective Shout, that's sort of all I have to say about, as the Steam side of things, I should say. But Collective Shout, they targeted another game site, itch.io, and that's a place, I believe they sell indie games. But you can put, like, any kind of indie game up there, like, even, like, a really, like, spicy, like, not safe for work indie game, like, anything went, for quite a while. But, I bring up itch.io specifically because players have reported that after Collective Shout went after them and told them, nah, get rid of all your problematic games, and they did, players have also reported that their banned games that were banned but that players already owned, disappeared from their libraries. And that's not normal. So like, for example, let's say I bought a game off of Steam and that game gets delisted later. They're not supposed to take it out of my library. It should still stay in the library and I can still play it. It just wouldn't show up on the store if I go look it up. And I assume that was the case for itch.io until recently when, you know, they were told ban the games, but then players who use the website, they look and they're like, no, it's gone from my library too. And I think also too, the way that works, like itch.io would have had to have intentionally gone and like plucked the game out of their libraries. Because as I said, I think delisting a game still gives you access to the game if you already bought it. Which is fair and that makes sense because you bought it, but it's like these people bought these games and because now someone later, you know, finds it offensive, you know, now they can't play the game that they paid for. They're being punished for something they couldn't have seen coming. Like, you know, someone just got up and said, nah, I find this offensive, so, you know, it's whatever. In a weird way, too, this was also kind of the principle between Stop Killing Games, that petition that was going around some time ago, where, you know, a lot of that argument was about like, okay, why do they shut down the online servers for a game? If I paid money for the game, there should be something there for me to still revisit, you know, because I paid for this thing. It's kind of the same deal. Like, I paid for this, why are you taking it away from me when you feel like it? Anyway, so yes, Collective Shout's involvement into this opened the floodgates, and half of anime and gaming Twitter are talking about this. Now, before I continue and I kind of get into some of my more nuanced takes and some of the more, you know, I guess, in-between things, whatever, you get what I mean, like the little details. There is some pertinent information I do need to reveal about Collective Shout that is going to be beneficial in understanding anything else I mention about them in this video from here on out. So Collective Shout is, first off, they're Australian. I mean, really, that right there is an egregious enough offense as is. Was just a joke. They are also radical feminists, and while the group, the movement as a whole does not claim a religious or political affiliation, the founder of Collective Shout, Melinda Tankard-Rice, I probably butchered her name, I apologize, except not really because she's kind of a piece of shit, but the founder, she's also a Christian fundamentalist, and she's anti-abortion. The group has also defended cuties. Yeah. Even sort of putting that last one to the side, which that last one really should be just the final nail in the coffin. Like, you shouldn't be taking them seriously, like, even, like, just off of that alone. But even ignoring that and looking at the other stuff, well, put simply, and I'm not going to get into, like, the details on each of those because, you know, I woke up today choosing violence, but, like, I ain't choosing that much violence, you know? Like, I'm just trying to raise some awareness, but I ain't trying to start a bloodbath just yet. But put simply, at face value, I hope you guys can at least notice this. It seems that, Collective Shout's primary beliefs are enough to piss off both sides, in addition to the banning of games and potentially this could stretch to anime and other media as well. Actually, not even could. It will. If we let things go on like this, it most definitely will. Yeah, that's gonna piss off everyone. And then also this dichotomy is also making it really hard for people to actually discuss this topic because Collective Shout, I'm referring to them as a group again. Collective Shout being rad femmes who bitch about sexy women in video games, but then also being anti-abortion and religious nutjobs, has created a pretty damn good smokescreen where most everyone is now pointing the finger at each other and trying to gauge whose political side is more at fault for what's going on here. You have left-wingers swearing they're right-wing and saying that it's the right's fault this is happening. You have right-wingers saying, well, no, but they're feminists, so feminist is usually something that we associate with the left wing, so, you know, there's gotta be, it's you guys, like, y'all are doing this. And to be fair, a lot of the, mostly when it comes to the depiction of women in games, a lot of that has come from feminists, especially left-leaning ones. So I'm not, I'm gonna be real with you, that second one I can definitely see why, that's being said. I'm sorry, I'm a little biased here. But my point is, instead of just everyone coming together and acknowledging, that collective shout and the payment processors involved in this, just seeing them for the problems that they are and saying, all right, we need to do something about these people. Like, once again, people are just incentivized to just participate in the issue, not necessarily because they care about preservation, but just to use it as leverage against their opponents. And that leads us to Twitter. Well, I mean, a lot of this was already intertwined with Twitter, but we're going directly into Twitter now. Actually, I think it's kind of funny how even though Twitter's officially called X, we all still keep calling it Twitter. It's kind of funny. But yes, I'm going to go through some tweets I have seen regarding this whole situation. I guess tweets that I particularly feel strongly about. Hopefully most of us are on the same page here. I do have other opinions on the whole thing, but all of that research I did before to get the above information, it kind of fried my brain, so I'm gonna also read these to try and jog my memory on the other stuff I wanted to talk about. If you see a take displayed here, it's either something I really agreed with, it's needed for context for something else that I agreed with, or it was so dog shit that I had to say something about it. But if it is that third option, I only ask that this should go without saying, but I'm going to spell it out for you just in case. Do not go out of your way to harass any of these people on my behalf. 99% of these, I'm criticizing the take and not the person themselves. The only exception being is if who they are provides additional context to what they're saying, but that's usually not going to be the case. So let's get into it. So actually, the first several of these tweets are going to be quotes directly quoting the itch.io update. So just keep that in mind. Isn't it great that not only can retarded feminists block you from buying new games, they can also take away the games you already own? Yeah, like I had said before, it's one thing to ban the game. No, it's not one thing to ban the game. You shouldn't ban the game either, but banning the game is one thing, but then going and plucking it out of the library of people who already bought it, some next level shit right there. It won't just stop here. Eventually, it'll also be games that are too violent, games that are openly queer, or games that are openly political. Credit companies should not have the right to censor what art you can see. Corporations should not have the right to control our lives. Yeah. And I mean, even me, I'm not someone who likes every single, thing or every single type of depiction of something, but I want to make that decision for myself. I can look at something and I can figure out for myself whether or not I want to watch or play that. I don't need someone else making that decision for me. And I figure most people feel the same way. And if this is a think of the children type of thing, well, maybe we should be telling parents to parent their kids better and not leave them unsupervised and, leave it on government regulation or something to do it for them. Tell parents to watch their kids more if you're more worried about the kids. Actually, I'm going to go on a tangent here. I think part of the reason this whole think of the children has been that's been a pretty old saying. That's always kind of been the thin part of the wedge that, people who wanted bigger things maybe removed, censored, or changed or whatever, and they used the children are in danger to kind of, get their way in there. But I will say too, I think there just aren't a lot of spaces, ironically online, that allow kids to sort of, use technology, while still being relatively safe. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but let me use a few examples. Back when I was a kid, and keep in mind, ironically, the internet was like the Wild West back then, but back when I was a kid, there was CartoonNetwork.com, Nickelodeon.com, DisneyChannel.com, a bunch of Flash games. There were spots that were sort of geared towards kids, that allowed kids to just, do their thing without being exposed to the same shit that adults were. And I feel like the loss of that and sort of throwing kids into the same mix and the same sort of, content that adults consume, well, I'm just gonna say this, it has definitely made it easier for people to scream think of the children, because it really did seem like when it comes to navigating the online world, we did kind of forget about the children. Not that that's an excuse to do what's being done here, but that is just something I wanted to point out, that I do think this whole situation with children was less of an issue when there were actual spaces for children on the internet. And then another thing too, because, okay, obviously kids are curious, Like, even when I was a kid, like, yeah, you would wander on the internet to places that you're not supposed to be in. You would go, like, on YouTube and go to a comment section knowing full well that, like, all the people commenting are adults. And, but it's like it was different back then because it's like, I don't know, you were trying not to make it blatantly obvious that you were a kid. Like, yeah, they could all probably tell, but, like, at the very least, you kind of knew that, like, okay, either try and act as grown up as you can, or just shut up and watch the video and just say, like, comment, like, nice video at the end or something like that. You get what I mean? But yeah, that's not the case anymore. Anyway, moving on. To all the people that were cheering on the censorship of Japanese adult content thinking that they had a morally superior stance, don't worry, payment processors are slowly coming for your games too now. And that's another thing that I kind of wondered as I saw this situation unfolding and I saw it showing up on my Twitter timeline just more and more and more. And don't get me wrong, I've always sort of been anti-censorship. I've never really, like, loudly proclaimed it, mostly because I'm not really the kind of guy to start fights on Twitter unprovoked or anything like that. So yeah, there's that, but I've generally always believed that. So I'm sitting here and everyone's going on and on about, you know, Collective Shout, itch.io, Steam, blah, 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 whatever. They've been doing this for, you know, the past week and some change. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, all right, yeah, this sounds really bad. And, you know, I hope this gets sorted out. But at the same time, I'm like, this is nothing new. Like, censorship discourse, it happens on Twitter like every other week, if not every week. Like, the only reason it's such a big deal now is because the blast radius is a little bigger. You know, it hit a little more than just the fringes, I guess. People were referred to as pedophiles and groomers for warning y'all about this, and now y'all care. Funny that I come across this one, because this actually, it kind of ties into what I just said. On the sort of anime, manga, JRPG side of things, I don't think it's any secret, lolly content a lot of times is on the receiving end of censorship, I would say. And, well, sometimes these days it could be a character that passes the quote-unquote looks of consent, but is canonically like a high schooler or whatever. So actually, these days it doesn't even have to be a lolly character anymore. But the point is, that type of subject matter, it's very often on the receiving end of censorship, especially recently. And yeah, like anime fans, JRPG fans, manga fans, whatever, they'll be calling this stuff out, being like, no, they censored this character's boobs, or they put like a black void under this character's skirt when there shouldn't be one there, or they changed this dialogue or whatever. And these guys, they get told to like shut up, or you're a Adobe PDF file, or you're just exaggerating, or oh man, you just want a goon, just go watch porn, which, yeah, funny. I never considered the whole just go watch porn thing to be a good rebuttal, because, oh, let them ban this thing out of this anime or this manga or whatever. Let them ban this content and you can just go watch porn. Like, bro, you don't think those same people will try and ban porn next when they're done with that thing? Like, really, dude? But yeah, as I said, now that it's affecting more people than just like the people in like more niche areas, you know, now that it's a little more than just the undesirables getting hit, yeah, now it's a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal. Like, I do care about this, but I'm just saying, like, you know, the signs were there and there were warnings. It's just one of those things where it has to happen to people before they start taking it seriously. Reminder to always pirate your games. Fucking men. Sorry, fair game. It's fair game now. There's like this quote that's been going around. I forgot who said it, but it goes like, if you buy a game but don't own it, then it means that if you pirate it, you're not stealing it or something like that. Yeah, words of wisdom. Give me my porn games, nigga. People need to realize that MasterCard/Visa, Collective Shout, and censorship advocates have declared war on everyone for years. On the gamers, LGBT, creatives, etc. No one is safe from them. They will not stop. What you love will be next. I don't disagree, it's just that, like, literally it's just people pay more attention to who's saying something than what's being said. Because, literally, if someone says this, if someone says, my thing is getting censored, watch out, and help out because your thing is going to be next, literally, if the person who says it happens to be on the quote-unquote wrong team, like, it's like the person will be like, oh no, that's not gonna happen to me, like, yeah, you enjoy that, like, it'll never happen to me, whatever, and then it happens to them, and they're like, what happened? For the past decade, no faction has advocated for total artistic freedom. The right shrieked against woke grooming, the left against anything problematic, normies against gooning, and now they're all blaming each other. Yeah, that does actually kind of go back to what I was saying about how, because Collective Shout is sort of a trail mix of a bunch of, you know, beliefs, because of that, everyone is too busy trying to figure out whose political side is more to blame for this, that they, you know, they can't just look at Collective Shout and just be like, get the fuck out of here. You get what I mean? Well, really, Collective Shout and the payment processors. I keep saying Collective Shout because I guess I can associate, you know, faces with what's going on, but they really wouldn't have been able to accomplish this without the payment processors. I really should be giving both of them the same level of ire, but I guess because I spent a lot of time talking about the payment processors at the beginning, and now it's kind of shifted from them to Collective Shout, you know, it's just habit. But they're both at fault. This next one, it isn't really this take that I'm commenting on, it's more so this is needed to provide context for the quote that I'm going to comment on, but it's the general political alliance the Chuds vote for that do this though. They're literally constantly in cope about how these payment processor bans are actually a good thing because their team is doing it. And then the quote, one of the quote tweets reads, this shit happened since 2023 with DL Site and Pixiv. You guys did nothing to speak out against the Diddy Gooner games being censored because God forbid the Chuds be right. Your apathy to censorship paved the way to this mess. So yeah, a few things to unpack here. I do think the person who was being quoted, the person who I initially read, was being a little disingenuous because I do think there are some like politically brain-rotted chuds that do think like, oh, the right can't do any wrong. But I think your average anime fan or your average gamer who gets labeled as a chud is probably at least somewhat cognizant of the fact that both political extremes hate them. If anything, they're probably closer to being doomers. They're probably fully aware that everybody, like, that nobody likes them and they have no one, like, except themselves and each other. This just isn't a partisan issue. I don't think this issue needed to be, you get what I mean? As the person who quoted, the first person said, like, this isn't the first time payment processors have overstepped their boundaries. As a matter of fact, yes, a lot of the people that are now coming in and saying censorship is wrong, but this is the right-wingers' fault. Yes, these are the same people that, you know, they saw a little bit of lolly content or a little bit of fan service or whatever, and they started calling everyone who was defending it frickin', well, it wasn't, I don't think Diddy was a meme back then. It wasn't Diddy Gooner, it was probably Epstein Disciple back then, but yeah. So I agree there. Oh boy, this one. Remember that Collective Shout is not a feminist group. They are a right-wing group who for now are targeting not safe for work content under the garb of protecting women and children. They'll soon target games and media with LGBTQ representation. There is a reply to this, and actually the reply is kind of what I wanted to highlight. However, I do have a few comments on the initial tweet as well. Because this person is kind of going with the, alright, listen, they're totally right-wing, which they are, in a sense, and it is very possible. She's not wrong, yes, it is very possible they can, you know, especially considering the founder is a, well, let's keep it real, the founder is like a religious nut job, it seems. A nut job in general, but you get what I mean. Putting the crosshairs on, you know, LGBT content, is definitely a possibility, or an inevitability, actually. Let me, let me amend that. I don't think that means that they're not feminist, though, because, yeah, maybe on the internet having stances like being religious or being anti-abortion is enough to, like, disqualify you from being considered a feminist on the internet, or possibly on a college campus as well, if we're gonna, you know, move over into real life. But I feel like in, like, you know, outside of that, like, in real life, like, just, you're on the street or whatever, maybe the older women in my life, you know, are a bunch of problematic bigots. I don't know. But I don't know. I've come across plenty of women in that age group who refer to themselves as feminists and, yell women's rights at the top of their lungs and, parrot a lot of those talking points and would 100% want half of my games frickin' thrown into a fireplace because it offends them. But they also have something to say about abortion, for example, or they have, they have some opinions where I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, listen, if you said that on Reddit, you would get absolutely sauteed in the comments. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, so the fact of the matter is the criteria for being a feminist on the internet and the criteria for being a feminist in real life, they're not quite the same. Again, maybe a lot of the people in my immediate circle that I'm forced to interact with from day to day are a bunch of bigots, I don't know. But this definitely seems like more of an internet-centered take. I know plenty of women in real life who they're in lockstep with a lot of feminist talking points, but they do have some beliefs that, again, may not disqualify them from being feminists in real life, but again, they'd get cooked on the internet if they were to unapologetically say those things. So I really think it is kind of a spectrum, albeit this Collective Shout founder is on a very strange end of that spectrum, that's for sure. But I am noticing that this initial person who posted this is sort of trying to no true Scotsman her way out of the sort of feminism aspect of Collective Shout. Saying that Collective Shout is like using it as a way to masquerade their more right-wing beliefs, which could be true to an extent, but I don't think it's like, I don't know if they're using it to sort of Trojan horse in like religious dogma or anti-abortion stuff specifically. And I say that because like you go to the website and like 90% of it, the thing they are still hung up on is protect the children, namely girls due to the nature of the group, and sexualization bad, porn bad, blah blah blah, which porn bad can also be kind of a, honestly, the whole porn bad thing, you could apply that to both of them, to be fair. Honestly, they both hate porn when it's convenient for them. Collective Shout are also a feminist group, and primarily one. Their being right-wing is secondary, and not all of their members are. Censorship isn't a partisan issue. People on both the right and left were celebrating the censorship just as little as a week ago. Which is true. Both sides have been guilty of, I guess, having their hand in that figurative cookie jar and cheering on censorship when it's convenient for them. Now, I will admit, as of late, it could be a byproduct of the type of games that I play, generally featuring women who are scantily clad, but a lot of times, very often it does appear to be, leftist. I say leftist because a lot of times it's feminist and a disproportionate amount of them lean left. So it does seem like a lot of times, when there's censorship discourse regarding like an anime, a manga, a JRPG, something like that, pretty much anything from Japan, it seems like frequently they're the ones that that fans are trading blows with. However, there has been, a surge of, right-wingers who are off their rockers too, and they want it censored for religious reasons or whatever. There's been more of them coming out of the woodwork as well. Yeah, with the whole, radical feminists or just feminists in general, complaining about how female characters are dressed or, fan service or anything like that, like, every other day, almost. But even, I guess on the other, side of this, just as an example, like there was, Stellar Blade. Someone made a mod of the main character Eve, and she had the frickin', the interracial, cuck fetish tattoos, the spades and stuff. I am fully aware of what hill I'm about to die on by mentioning this. Believe me, I wish the hill I was dying on was a little more palatable than this, but it is what it is. Basically, it was a mod that gave her interracial cuck fetish tattoos, like the spade and all that bullshit or whatever. It was some nasty work. You wouldn't catch me downloading it, but whatever. The person put it up on Nexus Mods. Nexus Mods bans it. What's interesting though is that Nexus Mods leans very hard left, at least from what I've seen. So I can only theorized that their reason for banning it had more to do with we don't like how you're sexualizing this woman and less to do with the fetish itself, because the admins at Nexus Mods banning a mod that tends to cater towards cucks, I don't know, some friendly fire is going on right there, but that was something that was sort of, you know, blowing up on Twitter a few weeks ago, and in a twist of irony, it was a lot of lolicons that were cheering about this thing getting banned. Like, this was something that, like, you look at it, you're like, okay, yeah, ew, I don't like this, and you could just scroll past it. But, like, a lot of lolicons, you know, the guys who are usually saying freedom of speech and it's just a drawing, were walking back on that real quick. So that's just a brief summary of what was happening, and just, you know, a couple examples of, you know, both sides sort of going back on that principle when it's convenient for them. You know, suddenly the freedom of speech motherfuckers aren't so freedom of speech anymore when, you know, when it benefits them. I also learned as I was going through that drama that a lot of their disdain for NTR, if you don't know what NTR is, you're one of the lucky ones. But I also learned that a lot of their disdain for NTR had nothing to do with cheating and everything to do with the skin color of the participants being depicted. And I will leave it at that. Moving on. But the point is, the lure of censorship, it can be attractive to either side of the, I guess, culture war. It just depends on whether or not it's convenient for them to take advantage of it. If you have a fairly consistent stance with it, both sides hate you at some point or the other. Or always. Yeah, they probably just always hate you. With the anti-porn crusade coming from a TERF organization. Oh yeah, TERF, I forgot to mention that. I guess that's not really surprising because, you know, of all the other stuff I mentioned about Collective Shout. But with the anti-porn crusade coming from a TERF organization, I hope gamers finally realize that queer people were never their enemy and that we have a shared struggle they won't. Now, I'm not calling this person out because they're trans. They just happen to be trans, and, you know, it has nothing to do with that. And it has everything to do with the thing standing in front of that trans flag. You might be wondering what them being a furry has to do with this. I would say, specifically when it comes to lolly stuff, furries will literally be the lollicon's biggest ops with this whole, oh, they censored my stuff, this is wrong, and furries will be among the first people jumping in being like, well, that kind of just makes y'all Adobe PDF files because it doesn't matter if it's a drawing or whatever. Failing to realize that the shit that they're into really isn't that far off on the degeneracy scale, and your average person who would advocate for lolicon, not lolicon, I got it mixed up. Lolicon is the person, lolly would be the character. Or Shota, that's the male equivalent. The average person who would be on board with getting that banned because they would think lolly or Shota is pedophilia, is most likely also gonna think that the shit that you beat your dick to, or if you're a girl, you know, do your thing accordingly, whatever. I'm speaking from the perspective of a guy, but the shit that you get off to, like, they gonna see that as bestiality, most likely. I would say your average furry is probably a little more tolerated in society than your average lolicon, but I mean, barely. You guys are not far off. If the lollies and the shotas fall, like, the furries aren't gonna last much longer. They're gonna be next. Oh, funny how I said that. That's kind of what the next tweet that I wanted to do. Lolicons were the first line of defense against art censorship, and you ridiculed and mocked us. May your artistic niche be spared. Good luck. Yeah, it kind of caps off what I just said. Like, you know, this has been happening with, especially a lot of times lolicon shit, but, you know, even, like, just shit that happens, wild shit that happens in anime in general has been, you know, like I said, this happens very often. But now that it's a little bigger than just them, you know, suddenly everyone's paying attention. So yeah, just in summary so far, just a whole bunch of things just happening at once. But I guess the part of this that just really annoys me, and it's probably something you could sense in my tone just overall throughout the entire video so far, is that a lot of people are very much being, you know, fair weather about this. You know, they're either talking about it because it's affecting them or because it's cool to talk about it or whatever. So a few days ago, a online safety bill act was passed in the UK, where basically if you're going on any kind of website or going to do anything online that's sort of like geared towards adults, then it requires a photo ID verification to do that. And when I say like geared towards adults, I don't mean just porn either. It applies to porn as well, but it also applies to like games that are like rated as like sort of, you know, for more mature audiences. I even have a friend who's from the UK, and he said he's no longer able to make purchases on this game called Girls Frontline 2. I assume because it has things that I guess the UK finds inappropriate, so he had to literally use a VPN to get around that. And yes, some of this stuff, it can be circumvented with a VPN, but you know, it's the principle. Like, you shouldn't have to do all of that. But yeah, there's that. Also, you know, when I say adult, I also mean like alcohol or serious topics, because this has kind of been making the rounds on Twitter. People have been saying like, oh, I can't even visit like a subreddit about beer because it's stopping me and asking for ID verification because it's flagged as an adult activity, which it technically is, but like, who wants to give their ID up and, you know, have that, like, you get what I mean, just to go look on a subreddit about beer. People also can't even, like, if they're a part of like a Discord server and some of the channels cover, again, when I say adult, it doesn't have to be something pornographic. It could just be like some serious topics or something that like you would, you know, you wouldn't want like kids to, you know, engage with, but adults, it would be fine. Like, you know, you got people, they literally run their own Discord server and they can't get into half of their own channels because they're getting locked out because of the ID verification shit. And I mean, it really just is the cherry on top of all of this. And it doesn't help anyone. I mean, the UK does have some pretty bad child abuse issues as is. This isn't going to help anyone. All it's going to do is it's going to push kids to use VPNs more, and kids these days, they do know what VPNs are. And like I said, a lot of this can be circumvented with a VPN, but you get what I mean. Like, nobody should have to do that. Kids shouldn't have to be thinking about doing all of that. And really, it probably could end up pushing them more towards like websites they shouldn't be at, to be fair, because the whole point of a VPN is to sort of mask yourself so that, you know, you can't be kicked out of certain places based on your location. So really, depending on where they go, that could actually be like even worse for them. Adults who were already eligible to go to those sites anyway, you know, they're gonna lose their privacy if they decide to submit their ID verification. I would like to think most people wouldn't bother, but some people probably would just do it, unfortunately. You get what I mean though, everyone loses. And then going back to the topic of right-wingers, specifically the religious ones, they hear about this UK stuff and a lot of them are like, well, hey, that's pretty cool, like a stricter regulation on porn. And then some of them, they do a little digging and they're like, oh no, I can't go on the beer subreddit either? I can't go into certain Discord channels? Wait, well, hold on a minute. I mean, what you did at first was kind of based, but we didn't mean like this, and that kind of goes back into what I was saying before. It's never just going to stop at the thing that you didn't like. This censorship, it's happening on their terms, not yours. They're not doing it based off of what you find comfortable or uncomfortable. They're doing it based off of what's convenient for them. And if you are at any point inconvenient to them, they are going to throw you out like yesterday's garbage. And with all that said, unless between now and when I upload this something else happens, hopefully doesn't, knock on wood. But yeah, this video has been long enough as is. Actually, I think this is going to be hands down my longest shower thoughts video, so I didn't mean for it to be this long. I knew it was probably going to be long. I didn't mean for it to be this long. Hopefully you at least had a snack or something to, you know, help ease the pain a bit. But all that being said, do leave a like if you enjoyed it, or you can dislike too if I've somehow upset you. Sub to the channel if you haven't already. A special thanks to all channel members for your continued support. It is much appreciated, and I will see you all again very soon. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some physical copies of Senran Kagura to go hunt down, because at this point you never know.